Hi, it's Kathy here, and this is the first session of free motion quilting, and this is a bit of a recap for those of you that had started the course already with us. So I'm going to sort of talk a bit about some of the quilting, and then I'm going to go on to actually do some drawings. Later on we may well add some videos of us actually stitching some of the blocks as well. But for the moment we're going to concentrate on drawing. So for those of you that started the course already, you'll know that you did in your first session filler stitches, and that was things like a meander and stippling, hearts and loops and pebbles. And you've no idea how difficult it has been for us to set an appropriate backdrop. But behind me I have an example of pebbles, but I daren't move the camera because it will fall over. And then we went on to mussel shells and some paisley patterns. And then our session 3 part, and I'm not sure how many of these we're going to link together, we're going to do some starbursts with spirals, some wobbly lines, something we lovingly call ladies' legs, and then bark. So I think that's probably a good introduction of where we're going to start. So we are going to then look at repositioning so that we can actually video some of what we're doing. So thank you. Okay, this is a bit of a recap really. One of the things that I would do if we were physically together, and some of you might have already experienced that, is that when you're sitting and you're doodling, you often think you can't draw. Well, you don't have to be able to draw to quilt, you can just doodle, and in effect that's what you're doing on the machine. But often when you're sitting looking straight down on top of it, it will look quite different from how you think it does, and I will frequently grab your pad that you're doodling on and hold it up and say, no, you need to look at it from a distance. So really it's to remind you that that's what you need to do. Okay. So this is session 1, and this is a meander, and on this you're looking at sort of free flowing with your machine, and by that you're going to be moving your fabric in ways that are quite alien to you. So rather than just forwards and backwards, we're going to actually be moving it. So first of all, meander shape, you want nice clean lines that sort of flow quite nicely. Let them fill, don't worry about every gap. And just sort of your working way. This is a great way to move across a really big quilt if you just want something quick and simple and you don't want anything to take it away. Now, the best way to demonstrate how this works with a piece of fabric is if you get a clear piece of something and you put a dot in the centre, and then you line that dot up with the top of your thing. Your hands need to be quite flat when you're quilting, but if you use this bit of plastic to travel over your meander, you'll get a sense of how you're moving your fabric around in your machine. So you see you're going gently side to side. You'll work out your own speed and both your hands and your foot control. So you can see here that I'm just sort of moving around gently to that pattern, but that gives you a sense of how that actually works when you're actually machining it. So let's move on next. Now here you see I've cleared all the decks, but I'm well aware that things then come in the way as I start to do things. That's something dropping on the floor again, but hey ho. Okay, next one you're going to have a go at, and here you can divide up, is some stippling. If you think jigsaws when you're doing this, I'm assuming that I'm still in the camera. Here you're working across. What you don't want to do is create lines of stitching. You actually want them again to flow quite nicely, and you can do this so that it's really small. So if you had an area like this, you can actually do stippling so it's quite small to fill an area, and it's quite effective. It gives you quite a nice firm sort of pattern. Or of course you can actually go really large, so it's not a meander, it's still jigsaw, like so. Okay, we're next going to have a look at some pebbles. People get a bit sort of like hung up by pebbles, and they're not the easiest to do, but they're actually a really important shape because they're great for fillers, and again can be made very small or very big. But it's a bit, I always sort of talk about it like the little train that thinks it can't get up the hill. So you start going round and you think to yourself, oh, where am I going to go off? Where am I going to go? And it's, I know I can, and then you go off. And you come off somewhere else. You don't need to worry about any holes that are filmed, but this is part of you actually learning how to actually go over lines, because you have to at times in order to move around the space. Don't get hung up if every pebble is not the same size or not round. That's not what we're aiming for. We're just aiming to sort of fill an area of a quilt. So here I'm going round. Sometimes you might just put in a little line to sort of take you to the next spot. So here I'm going to go round and round and round. And pebbles you can also do so that they're very tiny. So again, great for fillers, but don't make the mistake of actually creating pebbles where they're very small, and then you actually sort of, you know, if you start in the middle of a quilt, you'll find that you have to do that all over. If you're going to create a design where you're going to move out, and I'll show you in a different part of the video where we use them on the peacock quilt, because we wanted to fill them, and we start small and then we get bigger and bigger as we move out. So some designs lend themselves really nicely to that. Just be really careful that you don't keep doing that same thing. The final shape that we're going to use in this one is going to be hearts and loops. So here we go with hearts and loops. So usually when you're doing this, you're starting sort of from one area, but if you're doing this across a large quilt, then obviously you would always start where you can in the middle of a quilt. It would be unusual to start sort of at the edge, but for the purpose of showing you the design, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And this is where we first start to talk about the 1, 2, 3 movement. Okay, so here I'm bringing down first of all the loop. So here's 1. Wherever I stop will be the centre of my heart at the top. So here's my 2, which is the bottom of the heart, and a 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now that momentary stop you have, let's find a different pen so that I can actually show you where that is, will be here and here. So here and here. And the reason you do that is because you need to be able to get a point at both of those places. If you don't have that momentary stop, and it's almost like you have to stitch it in order for it to make sense, then what you'll end up with a round bottom on your heart, and nobody wants a round bottom. So it's really important that you follow it through. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Takes a bit of practice, but it means that you can do lots of different shapes. So the direction that you're drawing in is, do it on here, so 1, this is 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Come in here again, 1, 2, 3. This is 1, 2, 3. And then you can finish off where it's really great for travelling across a quilt. You can do a very quick quilt with doing this. Again, you can make it very large, you can make it small. Remember that you need to know about the wadding that you're quilting on. When we're doing the free motion quilting courses, we use 80-20. That's 80% cotton, 20% polyester. And the reason we do that is because it grips the fabric nicely. And so the fabric tends not to slide around. If you're using polyester, you need to use always a needle punched wadding anyway, but it does tend to slip, so you just need to make sure that you're securing it well. Once you've got your whole quilt together and it's layered up and pinned, then that happens less. but you do tend to get, in our experience, or in my experience, a bit more puckering if you use polyester rather than 80-20. One of the reasons why we use that when we're teaching is so that you get a nicer finish to your quilt. Okay, now with a combination of what you've done in this session, it means that actually you could also put together a bunch of grapes. So you've got your loop. So here you come down with your loop. So here's your one. Now we're going to put your heart on it, except we're going to turn it into a leaf. So here's your 2, 3, and just bring a vein down into it. You only need to do one, unless you particularly want to become, artistic and add more. You could do a little flurry on here, in which case you want to be able to travel back over it. And now we can come back again, do a little flurry here, and back again. And now you can use pebbles to create your grapes. So already you've got something that you could put into the corner of something. You could put it onto some oven gloves. I guess you could make a cover for a wine bottle. Not suggesting that lockdown has driven me to drink, but I think some of us may have. And then you could just pick up somewhere else and do something the same. So hearts and loops, 1, 2, 3, add a vein, come back. You can put another little loop in there if you want to, add a little flurry, travel back, add a flurry, travel back, and then grapes, pebbles. So quite a nice sort of easy to do. Good idea when you're watching TV or you're on your phone to, I don't know, your mum, your mother-in-law, whoever, that you could actually sit just doodling. There we go. So I'm just going to go through now some of what we've done. And this is our meander, which obviously, you could work your way right down a quilt. It does look very odd when I look at it like this on camera, but hey ho. It's just a second version which I was using, if you remember, to demonstrate with a bit of clear plastic and a dot on it. If you run that over, then you can actually get a sense of how you're moving fabric around in the machine. And these are examples here of, first of all, the spirelli, or squiggly diddly as we often fondly call it, smaller versions, larger versions, etc. One where I'm telling you to think jigsaws. And pebbles, again, large and small. Hearts and loops. Remember I talked about that 1, 2, 3 movement as well. So here you're coming down and round. There's your 1, there's your 2, and there's your 3. 1, goes to there, sorry, 2, 3. There's your 1, 2, 3, and you can see on this one lower the direction. I'm going to include photographs of many of these in the notes. And this was me just showing you that you can then draw bunches of grapes with what you learn in that first session.